The real cost of an IUL. Why fees miss the risk that matters. You did the responsible thing. You focused on costs. You compared policies. You scrutinized line items. That wasn't naive. That was discipline. But discipline, applied to the wrong variable, creates fragility over time. The most expensive IUL rarely looks expensive. And the one that feels efficient is usually the first to fail. Not because of the market, not because returns disappointed. The risk isn't market loss. It's structural decay. It doesn't show up early. It waits until income softens, until life interrupts, until you stop paying in and the policy keeps charging. That's when decay shows itself. Not on a spreadsheet. It's in hospital rooms, in months you don't work. And when that moment arrives, only one question matters. Does this structure survive when you step away? Hello, my name is Robert Balkach. I'm the founder and CEO of Black Swan Insurance Group. Since 2017, our firm has worked with over 20,000 families and earned more than 850 five-star reviews by redesigning financial structures that look efficient on paper, but break under real-life pressure. This isn't a defense of Index Universal Life. Fees matter. Costs matter. Anyone telling you otherwise isn't serious. But fees are not the risk that ends strategies. What ends strategies is structural fragility. Designs that only work if income is uninterrupted forever. Health is stable, and life behaves. If you're a business owner, you already know that's a fantasy. If this conversation feels uncomfortable, that's intentional. You can book a calm design review with our team at any point. You can just click on the link below in the description. But first, you need to see where most policies actually fail, because it's not where people are trained to look. But first, I'd like to tell you a quick story about Min. Min was 44 years old when he put his IUL policy in place. He owned an auto repair business, 2 locations, multiple bays, strong local reputation. And when things ran smoothly, revenue moved fast. When something broke, a lift, a technician, a supply chain, cash flow slowed just as quick. He had no employer retirement plan, no guaranteed paycheck. If Min didn't show up, the business felt it. And Min wasn't reckless. He saved aggressively. He reinvested into the shop. He built taxable accounts. And eventually, he added an IUL as part of a broader tax strategy. He asked about fees. He reviewed the illustration. He funded consistently. $2,500 a month, $30,000 a year. By age 53, he contributed $300,000. The accumulated cash value was roughly $330,000. He looked clean, predictable, boring in the best way. And then life intervened. Min's wife was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. No warning, no preparation. Everything had to be reprioritized overnight. Hospital visits replaced shop walkthroughs. Long days became long nights. Min wanted to be with her, not managing schedule, not chasing invoices. Income didn't collapse, but it softened. Expenses didn't explode, but they stacked. Health insurance deductibles, living expenses, months where Min worked less by choice and by necessity. This is the moment illustrations don't prepare you for. Point number 1, funding velocity is what buys time. Min's policy didn't survive because it was inexpensive. It survived because it had been fed early and hard. By age 58, Min had funded approximately $450,000 into the policy. At that point, the accumulated cash value was just over $615,000. That difference matters because funding velocity isn't about returns. It's about the margin. Margin to pause premiums. Margin to borrow without panic. Margin to let life take precedence. At age 59, Min stopped premiums entirely. $0 in, and the policy didn't collapse. Under IRS Section 7702, it remained compliant. Under Section 7702A, it avoided max status. But more importantly, it had already outrun its internal drag. This is where most policies quietly fail. They're sold as flexible, but they're only flexible if you never slow down. Min's wasn't cheap early, and that's why it wasn't fragile later. But funding velocity alone isn't enough, because the next silent cost never shows up on the fee disclosure. Point number 2, death benefit is a compounding liability. Min's policy was not designed to maximize death benefit. At age 53, the net death benefit sat just under $1 million. Enough protection, nothing excessive. And that decision became more important every year he aged. The cost of insurance charges stayed controlled, and internal drag didn't accelerate unnecessarily. Cash value wasn't being consumed to subsidize cost of insurance he didn't need. By age 63, even after several years with no premium, accumulated cash value is projected to be around $840,000. By age 71, it is going to exceed $1.4 million. And this is where cheap designs quietly lose. Oversized death benefits feels conservative. They reduce perceived risk. They look responsible. But over decades, they become a compounding liability. Mean structure stayed resilient because it wasn't carrying unnecessary weight. And that resilience was tested the moment loans entered the picture. Point number 3. Loans don't create risk, they reveal it. Mean borrow from policy to live. Not for upgrades, not for lifestyle expansion, just for living expenses, for medical deductibles, for time. This is where weak designs collapse. Loan interest accrues, net spreads matter, caps matter, internal efficiency becomes visible. Min's policy was illustrated with a 6.25 loan rate and a long-term crediting rate of 6.81%. Not guaranteed, not promised, but structurally balanced. There was a year Min wasn't sure the math still worked. Loan balances were visible and growth hadn't been reasserted itself. He felt uncomfortable. That's the moment optimism fails and structure takes over. The policy didn't break. Cash value continued compounding. At age 73, accumulated cash value is reaching approximately $1.63 million. At age 83, over $3.2 million. By age 93, approximately $6.2 million in accumulated cash value. Without triggering taxable income, without selling assets after a market drop, without asking anybody for permission. The policy didn't succeed because of returns. It succeeded because decay was controlled before loans ever started. No illustration shows cancer, but when life took over, Min's policy became liquidity, not liability. Premium stopped, loans funded life, and the structure absorbed the shock. Min wasn't forced to sell the business at the wrong time. He wasn't forced into taxable liquidation. He wasn't forced back to work because he was ready. This is what flexibility actually means. Not features, not promises, design. And unfortunately, most policies never get there. Here's the final verdict. Min funded approximately $450,000 over 14 years. He stopped paying premiums completely at age 59, and the policy continued compounding for decades. It supported borrowing during a medical crisis, and by age 93, it illustrated over $6 million in accessible value. Not because it was cheap, but because it was resilient. The risk isn't market loss, it's structural decay. The problem isn't owning an IUL, the problem is owning one that only works on paper. If your policy requires perfect income to survive, it's not flexible, it's fragile. So if you want to know whether your structure survives interruption, click on the link below and book a design review with me and my team. Not to add complexity, but to find out what breaks next if nothing changes. And remember, it's not what you earn, it's what you keep. Enjoy your